Welcome everyone to this week's episode of PEPTalk, Productive Environment Podcast. We are so excited to have you join us today. We are going to be talking about overwhelm. Overwhelm is optional. Focus on the vision and become unmessable with, no matter what life throws at you. I'm Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute, and I am here in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, joined by Barbara.
I'm Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute. I'm normally in Raleigh, North Carolina, but today I'm in Wilton, Iowa.
And our special guest joining us today, we're so excited to have Josselyne. So Josselyne, if you'll introduce yourself as well.
Sure, I'm Josselyne Herman-Saccio, and I am joining you from Paris, France.
Yeah. This is so exciting. I have to share this with you guys first before we get into the professional Josselyne and our professional talk today. I have to share this with you guys. How many out there are like me? You're like 80s and 90s girls. Okay. So look, Josselyne was in a band. That's the Boy Crazy. This is a 90s song. That's what love can do. And I should have actually opened with that music instead of the other music. Go to YouTube, you guys. Go to YouTube and look up this song, and you might remember it. I did when I started playing it, Josselyne. I was like,
it was the most played song of 1993. Is that crazy?
Really?
Yeah. It was
the most played song of 1993. Now I had graduated college in 92. So I was more of an 80s girl, so early 90s. But I did, when I heard the hook, I was like, I do know this song.
So. Oh, I know. I mean, I'm much older than you, but I still remember that.
Okay.
And I'm probably older than both of you, and I remember it.
No, you're not older than me, Josselyne. I'll argue.
All right, I'll give it to you, but you never know.
Well, I talk about, they always say women shouldn't say their age, and I say mine all the time because I'm 77. Beautiful. And I love life, and my passion is helping people realize that older than 50, my years after 50 have been much, much better than my years before 50.
Yeah, youth is wasted on the young, as they say,
Gives us hope. That gives us hope. So let me share the title slide again. So overwhelm is optional. And those of you that are in our community, we talk about overwhelm, right? You guys are dealing with overwhelm as you're trying to organize, you're trying to declutter your physical space and your email space, and it can feel overwhelming. And then now, especially, I think now it feels like with all of the things going on around the world, Barbara and I are in North Carolina, where we live in North Carolina. And if you're watching the news, you see Hurricane Helene and everything that's happening in our state, and not just our state, our East Coast states, and as well as Israel and as well as other things around the world. So we recognize that you and we are dealing with more overwhelm than normal, if there is such a thing as normal, right? And so Josselyne and I were just talking, it's like, it's really easy for us to say, just focus on your vision, focus on your goals. I mean, how many times have you heard that? But how do you do that when life is throwing stuff at you, and become unmessable with, no matter what life throws at you? So Josselyne, if you don't mind, I would love for you just to kind of kick that off. How do we do that when things are crazy?
Yeah. Well, first, let me distinguish what I mean by unmessable with, because sometimes people hear that as like, well, being tough and not feeling my feelings or something like that. That's not what it is at all. So what I mean by being unmessable with is being able to stay in the world of creation or vision versus getting hooked by the world of reaction. So most people, especially really effective people, like productive people, right, are really good reactors. And they have to be, because their business is throwing stuff at them that they have to put out this fire, or they're dealing with the family and this is happening. And so things are coming at them. That's very different than being a creator. That is more being a good reactor. Like, you can deal with fires, you can deal with whatever's coming at you. That's what I would call the world of reaction and survival. Because for the most part, when you're in that mode, reaction mode, I call it, you are literally surviving. I mean, your brain is wired to survive, so that's what it does. So your amount of space is smaller than when you're in the mode of creation and vision. It's a very different mode. Now, most people have some sense of what that's like to be in the world of creation, because at some point in their life they have been, whether it's in their relationship. Mostly it's in the beginning of a relationship. It's sort of like you're creating it. It's magical. It's exciting. You don't know what you're doing. You're just discovering. But then at some point, the relationship sort of moves into management mode. Like you're now managing your relationship. You're working on your relationship. You're doing things to deal with the person in your relationship. Same thing with businesses. You know, when I work with entrepreneurs and founders, in the beginning of their company, they had a vision. They were in action on their vision. They didn't know what they were doing. They were making mistakes. They were just I mean, you know, I'm sure you probably had the same thing happen with this podcast. You know, you created it. You didn't know what a podcast was. What's this? What's that? Who cares? You were just creating. And it didn't even matter if you were failing or succeeding at the metrics. You were enlivened because you were in that world of creation and vision. And then at some point, companies and things become more like, okay, we got to make the numbers, and we got to make sure the staff is paid, and we got to make sure we do this quarter over last quarter, and all those kind of things that end up in management mode. So that's a long answer to your original question, which is, how do you not be messable with, or how do you be unmessable with? The world of reaction is where you're messable with. So anytime you're in survival mode, if you're in get stuff done mode, I call it going through lifeness. You're going through life, and maybe that things are okay, but there's no magic. Right? Things are okay in my marriage, but it's not like how it was, or it's not like how maybe it could be, or it's okay, or it's fine. That's a good telltale sign that you're in that world of dealing with life versus creating life, which is a very different muscle. So the work that I do with people first has them identify their vision. Like, what is there? Most people can't even answer that question because they're so busy dealing with the bullets coming at them, you know, good, bad, and ugly bullets. So we first do work to clarify what their vision is. And oftentimes when people answer that question, and I think they do have an answer to it, it lives more in the world of goals than vision. And goals are very much specific. They're measurable. You accomplish them in reality. Vision is more spatial, more experiential. So you might have a goal to double your income, but your vision could be freedom.
That's a great way to describe it, I think. And I just love, I mean, I just wanted to say, yes, amen, amen, amen. I mean,
hallelujah. Okay.
Every word that's coming out of your mouth. And I think one of the things, and you may touch on this, and I'd love your thoughts on it. One of the things that occurs to me is that when people are in a traumatic situation, there is an opportunity for vision sometimes that you didn't have before. And the best way I think about that is, I have had people in the past whose homes burned down. And they said to me later, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because number one, you know, we've based our business on clutter is postponed decisions. People are afraid to make the decision because they're afraid they'll make a mistake or they'll want it back. Well, they suddenly don't have to make the decision.
That's right. Life made the decision for you.
Made for them. And then it's like, oh, now what can I, you know, what? So then suddenly you do have an opportunity for vision that you didn't have before, because it's given some space. And you're so right, Josselyne, about people don't think about vision because they're too busy coping with what's going on.
Exactly.
But then when something like that comes, there really is an opportunity. So I
think that's a perfect example, though, because all the work that I do fundamentally is about getting people to nothing. You know, because once they're at nothing, it's like a blank canvas. You can then create, you can have a vision. So I think what you're saying is, like, I mean, God forbid and cancel that somebody's house should burn down or wash away. But in that moment, you have a moment to look up and out at, what do I really want? What really matters to me? What do I want the experience of my life to be? Not the stuff, but the experience of life. And, one of the things I have people do, which you'll love, is when I work with them in my group coaching program, I have them do a physical space completion list. So I have them go to their medicine cabinets and clear out anything that's, whatever expired. I have them go to their bedside table, clean, because if you don't have space, you can't create jack.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, that is
So
just
right.
so absolutely.
Speaking your language, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. And if you're not willing, I mean, we just had someone recently who said, I'm kind of afraid of the space, and people are afraid of the space.
They are, because they have an atrophied muscle for creation. Most of their life is spent reacting. So that's part of the work that I do with people, is I develop their muscle to be unmessable with, which another way of saying that is to be able to create.
Oh, love it. That's so beautiful. So beautiful.
It really is. I was thinking, you were talking about the medicine cabinet and things. So, we'd had our storm here, our 1,000-year flood a couple of weeks ago, and I was helping a neighbor, and we had a whole team of people going into her below sea level apartment, helping her get things out. And it was kind of a staggering moment that I was in there and seeing basically strangers to her going through her stuff and boxing things up, and medicine and clutter and knickknacks and things. And it just, when I came back home to my condo, it was like, wow, what if that was me? What are people seeing? What are they going to be boxing up? What are they going to, it just was kind of a sobering moment, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, that speaks to the power of community and how generous people are and how amazing they are. But we should all be so lucky to have somebody come into our house and clean it out. When I moved, I remember I had my sister come to unpack because I packed all my clothes and brought them to the new apartment, but the new apartment was much smaller than the old apartment. So there really was no space. So I knew I was not trustworthy to get rid of stuff, because I have like my 7th grade jeans that haven't fit in 40 years, but I still have them, or those boy crazy outfits from 35 years ago, as if I will ever have an occasion to wear those bell bottoms. Right. And I had to just trust her. You do it. It's like, because if you don't let go, you can't expand.
Oh, and you use the word trust. In fact, Andrea and I were just having a conversation this morning about when people are trying to clear clutter, whatever that clutter is in their lives. I think there are 3 components that are essential. One is a system, a way to do it. You cannot do it randomly, because when you do it randomly, you just shuffle. You don't make decisions. You just shuffle. Secondly, you need to have accountability, because most of us are not accountable to ourselves. So we need to have someone else to whom we can be accountable, which is why they have coaches like you. And then third, you need to have community, because it's hard. If it were easy to do it, we would have all done it by now.
Yes.
But we can do it in community. So in your case, your sister was your community. She was your community, and people. So when somebody comes to us and say they want to clear clutter, it's like, okay, first we have to say, what is your system? Do you have a system? Who's going to be your accountable? And what's your community? And if you don't have those 3 things, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, well, may the force be with you. Yeah,
that's right. And that's where we come in.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So talk more about, you said your purpose is to get them to nothing. Can you elaborate on that? I love that, but it really does make my brain. So tell me more about that.
Well, most of what messes with people, what gets them into that world of reaction, are things like overthinking, or limiting beliefs, or disempowering conversations they have about themselves or the situation or other people. So that's all something, right? Fear, considerations, reasons, all those things are something. So if you're dealing with something, you can't create, because you don't have an empty space. You don't have a blank canvas. It's like giving you a filled up canvas saying, now create something. It's like, well, you can create something, but not anything, because there's something already there.
Oh, that's a great way to say it. I hadn't thought of it in those words. That's very, very creative, Josselyne. Very creative.
But so if you can distinguish the something that's in the space, just like you would do with clutter, right? So there are things cluttering the space of being able to create your vision for your family, for your marriage, for your business, for your well-being, for whatever it is, for your community, for the world. There's a lot of somethings in the space. I mean, turn on the news.
And often this something, what people think it is the physical something. But when you dig deeper, you realize it's not the physical something that's in the way. What's in the way is the fear related to that physical something.
Or the decision you made about the physical something. I mean, I just interviewed today for my podcast a gentleman who's blind Paralympic.
Wow.
And, when he first went blind, which was like he was a young child, it was a thing in the way until he got that this was not, his physical limitations in sight didn't have to limit him in living his life and even being an athlete. So when you deal with the physical reality of something, it never messes with you. It's what you make that mean that messes with you.
And I'll bet you anything, if you went back and asked him if he could have his sight again, he would say no, because he would say what he is ended up being able to do. He could, because I know I have a dear friend who's blind who does music, and he said, I don't want my sight back because it is what I have created could not have been created if I had.
Powerful. Yeah, I didn't ask him, so I'd have to go back and ask him, but I think that's a powerful assertion for sure.
It really is. Wow. So where did the term unmessable with come from?
Well, about 25-ish years ago, I was, I used to lead, I still do, but I used to lead for a company called Landmark Transformative Programs. And I was on a call with a bunch of leaders. And the person who was leading the call, who was one of my mentors who recently passed away, actually, named Richard Condon, he said something to somebody and he was like, well, you're just messable with, right? And I was like, okay, whatever that is, unmessable with is what I am now. That is what my life is about having people be unmet. So I just latched on to the word. Then I got it in the Urban Dictionary. After a decade or so, it ended up in Webster's Slang Dictionary. I just started using it. I have mugs, I have hats, I'm all into the swag. It to the physical reality, because when you have something physical, it becomes more real. Back to your thing about the clutter, right? So, I started to create this world, this reality around the word unmessable with. But it is a world. It's a world of being, and then your actions being given by your vision versus driven by a reason or a consideration or a fear. And being driven is a very different experience of life than being given.
Say that one more time. Being driven.
Sure. When you're given by a vision, by a dream, by something you've created from nothing, that's a different quality of life than when you're driven by a reason or a consideration or a fear or a belief or, something that has to happen, or that, any of that. It's driven and given. I mean, if you just think about the words, they are different worlds.
Oh, that is truth with a capital T.
Yeah.
And that rhymes with P, and that stands for Productive Environment Institute. Okay.
Okay. One second. What comes to mind as we're having this conversation is we do transformation boot camps. So we do an office transformation boot camp where we're dealing with the physical clutter, and we do a digital transformation boot camp where we deal with the email and computer and
digital clutter is a huge thing. It's on my list that I do with people. Definitely.
Yeah,
it's important.
Yes, absolutely right. And so I'm hearing a couple of things. I'll just download my brain. One, the big vision. Barbara is the visionary in our team. She's big picture, and I'm the logistical, hands-on doing. So, and our tagline is accomplish your work and enjoy your life. A lot of times in the productivity world, it's get more done, be more efficient so you can continue to get more done faster, work harder. Yeah. And we're saying, get it done so you can go out and do and create and do the vision. And what happens, I would love your advice on this part. What happens is, and I'm guilty of it myself, especially teaching the fundamentals and doing the work, getting into like decluttering. I mean, there is a physical work aspect. You have to
Absolutely. You have
do
to
the
like take things and move them
yes,
or get
take them.
somebody to do that if you
That's
can.
right. And delete and process and check your email and process your email. But what can happen is we get so sucked into that, and where everybody's focused on that, which makes sense during the boot camp because you're in class and you're doing the work, and that needs to happen. But we don't want to stay there.
Yeah.
We want to declutter, put in a system, and then maintain that system going forward so we can do what. And I think there are a lot of people in our programs too that they don't know what that what is. We have some who just love to create, but they haven't created in so long because they're so overwhelmed. And they either know what their vision is and they just can't do it because, like you said, how can you create when you're surrounded by clutter? Or they don't know what their vision is.
Yeah.
And either way, Barbara's advice is either way, start decluttering, because you can peel the layers off and there your vision might be, right?
Yeah, well, your vision can emerge if there's space. If there's no space, you can't possibly have a vision because you're too busy looking at what's right in front of you. So as you clear away those layers, as you say, Barbara or Andrea, whoever, if you take those away, then you can begin to look up and out at what you really want. But when I work with people on distinguishing their vision, it doesn't take long. I just have to ask enough questions. Like, so if they say, well, I just really want to pay off all my debt. Okay, that's a goal. So if you paid off all your debt, what would be there like a presence?
Right.
Well, then I would feel financially free. Okay, so let's say you're financially free, do whatever you want. Now, what is available to you as an experience of life? So you just have to ask them enough questions to get to the world of vision, because people are mostly, mired and tethered to this other world of reaction and dealing with things. And once they get into that space, then what I found is the vehicle is not as important. So, a company to help people with clutter is a vehicle. That's not your vision.
Right.
That's a vehicle that you have created and it's working. So you're doing that, but you're not stuck with that. You could create your vision through other means. I always say it's kind of like when people go, oh, you should fly Delta, fly Delta, fly. I'm like, okay, but where am I going that I need to fly Delta? Like, I don't know if Delta flies where I'm going. Why don't I first find out where I'm going? And then I can look to see what the best vehicle is, but people get fixated on the vehicle. And that's why they end up in prison of their own creation, because they're working harder, not smarter. They're not looking up and out. So they're, for the example, speaking to what you said about, you have people that do this boot camp and then they see all these things that, have to get done. One of the things that I have a mastermind for entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs and executives that want to minimally double their revenue, but work less.
Minimally double their revenue, but work less. Okay.
But work less. So it's actually not a mastermind. I say that because people understand that word, but it's a mastery program. So what we work on mastering is performance, which is action and inaction, creation, shifting from reaction to creation, and freedom, which looks different for every person. But most of the entrepreneurs that I was coaching as a one-on-one client, I would just see them just be in prison of their own creation. They create this company, it's doing well, but now they just have to work harder to feed the beast. And there's no freedom, and they're not living the life that they built this thing for in the first place. So you're not going to do that by default, because by default, life is going to give you more and more stuff to do. So how do you design your environment in a way where some of those things you're doing can be offloaded, delegated, handed off to someone else, including if you have to hire somebody that you don't currently have on your team, but it's a smart hire because it will free you up to do the work of creation, which gives you life, versus management, which can suck the life right out of you.
Oh, that is so true. And of course, you use the word that's near and dear to our hearts, which is environment. So
Yes.
the company productive environment, it has to productive. We call it an intentional setting. So it's like an intentional setting in which everyone can accomplish their work and enjoy their lives and enable others to do the same. And you can tell, I've been for 46 years, I've been in thousands of offices, and I know you too, Josselyne. You can walk into a space and instantly tell whether it's a productive environment. I mean, you just know it just like that.
Immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, that is just so, to be in that kind of an environment is so exciting. And a lot of people have never experienced it. So one of the exercises I sometimes will have clients do is I remember or recall or work on, where were you? What's something that you can think of where you were productive? And I remember it very clearly. This has been 40 years ago. There was a woman who was so mired in depression and stuff and whatever. And it turned out that every time she traveled in a hotel, they traveled very high level, she was fine. Well, it was very evident that there was no clutter in that hotel room.
Right, exactly.
And so, but she never made that connection. It's like, wow, that's why I don't have headaches and migraines and stomach and all of that when I'm in a hotel room, because I don't have all this clutter. And when she made that realization, it was like, wow. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's pretty funny. We recently moved to Paris part-time and the apartment was empty. It's a furnished apartment, but nothing in it. And it was like, there's nothing here. So we're like, putting posters on it. And now it's a couple years later and I'm like looking in the closet going, yeah, I'm not going to be wearing that ever again. I think it's pretty much time to I mean, even in just 2 years, you accumulate stuff.
Yeah, so true. I moved into this condo 2 years ago too. So I'm at that 2-year mark and I'm seeing it too. I'm like, and I downsized a lot 2 years ago. And now it's like, how did I get new stuff?
I know, really. It's called Amazon.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because it makes it so easy, right? I mean,
it is. It's just, you don't even have to go anywhere. You don't have to try anything on. You can just return it if it does. I mean, it's going shopping to me is a pain in the butt because I got to get undressed and then I got to get dressed and then I got to it's too much work. It's like, forget it. I don't even care.
I agree.
Well, you also bring up a point that I think is about the 2-year mark. One of the things we've done with companies is when they have lots of clutter, we do an event called a Productive Environment Day, or sometimes, depending on the culture, a productivity party. And it's literally an event we create with food and prizes and whatever to clear the clutter. And then once they realize, and of course the employee's like, oh, I have real work to do and I don't want to throw away anything. But then once they realize, oh, wait a minute, this really does help. And one of the things we've learned with companies is if they will do that annually, and it only takes half a day.
Yeah.
So if they make it the part of the culture of the company is that one half a day every year is designated as a day to clear the clutter, and they make it fun. Like I have one company who does it twice a year. They do it on St. Patrick's Day and they do it on Halloween. And that's part of the company culture. And the executive director who I did it with first said, we had a terrible time getting people to do it in the beginning. They didn't want to. He said, now I would have an infinitely more difficult time taking it away.
Yes, exactly. But let me ask you a question. How do you deal with remote companies? Because most of the companies that I work with are working remote. They don't even have a physical space. I mean, obviously the person's home that they're working in might be cluttered, but how do you do it that way?
Well, you have to go back to the vision. I mean, what is the clutter? And 90% of the work we do now is virtual, because one of the things we learned was that one of the things that most prevents people from asking for help about clutter is shame. I mean, I've had 3 major executives and companies that hired me off hours because they didn't want anybody to know that I was there.
Yeah.
And they don't want to share it. So doing it virtually works. So with a company that has virtual employees, it can still be an event. And Andrea is very brilliantly creating co-working spaces within our boot camps. So people are doing it. So we give them the system. So at the beginning, so let's say they spend a day or maybe even a half a day doing it. At the beginning, we would give them a system for whatever it is they want to clutter. We decide ahead of time, are we dealing with physical today? Or are we dealing with digital? And we would give them a system to do that. We would be accountable because we could all be on Zoom and everybody's kind of doing it at the same time, but we're in community. And I remember early on, I was working with an astrophysicist in Northern Virginia, and we were in his garage cleaning out boxes and boxes and boxes of files. And at one point he stopped and he looked at me, and we were laughing, and he looked at me and he said, if anybody would have ever told me that I would be laughing, cleaning out my garage, I'd have told them they were crazy. It was because of community, or as my mother used to say on the farm, many hands make light work.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
love that. That's great.
And the boot camps that we teach, and for anybody that's watching that wants to check that out, go to, you can sign up for a free webinar, productiveenvironment.com/webinar. It's either going to be, depending on when you're watching this, it's either going to be a replay of our recent webinar or sort of signing up for a future one. But those can also be customized for a company. So when we do the boot camp, we've got people that are individuals, mostly working out of their home office. And we've got people that use Gmail and Outlook and all these different, different platforms if they're doing digital. And so working with a company, we would just say, okay, what do you guys already use? What do you use? And what tools do you have? And we would work within the limits of what their company allows. And we would help them. So it's so wonderful to do it virtually because everybody can be in their own space. They're all learning the same principles, the same, systems, but they're doing it in their own space. And at the end of our last boot camp, our last office transformation boot camp, I threw in an extra bonus, and it was a Saturday, an 8-hour day Saturday called Paperpalooza. And
cute.
I was really surprised. I set it up and I said, I'm committing to being here 8 hours, thinking I would be alone some of that time, right? We had people on, most of them stayed on the entire time, and some came and went and came back, and it was fantastic. So working virtually, it can be. We're going to do one for a digital. I haven't even told our digital boot campers this yet, but we're going to have a digital detox day. So, it's going there, having us there to ask questions. We all worked independently and then came back for like 10 minutes to answer questions and things. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. So that's one of the main ways that we work. And as Barbara said, we do productive environment days with companies. We work virtually with these boot camps. I'd like, as we wrap up, Josselyne, how do you work and how do you help people and where can people find you?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you just want to start getting a taste of what I do, I have a lot of free offerings to just give people a sense. I have an imposter syndrome system that people can do to combat imposter syndrome. I have a book on how to have a more peaceful life in 30 days. I have a promise game, which is 5 days, and you start to practice creation instead of reaction. So there's lots of things. There's a workbook on the basics of being unmessable with. So there's not unlimited. There's a bunch of free stuff. And where you would find that on my website is beunmessablewith.com is the website. And then there's a part called freebies. That's where you'd go for the free stuff. And then if you want to do more in-depth work, there's work with me on that website, beunmessablewith.com, work with me. And you can explore either group coaching. I have some pre-recorded courses that you could do at your own pace. And I have very few one-on-one spots, but every once in a while I open one up. So, every once in a while, if you want to book an exploratory call, you can either get put on the wait list or, right now I actually have one spot right now, but I have 5 calls tomorrow about it. So who knows, but, but if anybody is listening and really wants to explore that, they can do that. And then I have the program that I told you about, the mastery program for entrepreneurs and CEOs and executives that want to minimally double their business, but not work harder, work smarter, and have freedom and power to create.
I love that.
Music to my ears.
That's a very limited. I only allow 10 to 15 people in that a year. So it's a year-long program. So it's super selective. It's by application or invitation only. But the group of people, like you say, community, you end up with a community of high performers who are out to break free from the prison of their own creation, while increasing revenue at the same time. So it's a very exciting group. The results they're producing are insane, and just in the first 6 months of the program this year.
Wow.
I think these are the people, Josselyne, that are going to change the world. The corporate world and all of that right now, they move so slowly, they're bureaucracy, and it's the people, thinkers like that are going to solve the problems of the world. And it's so exciting to be part of that. So I just want to thank you so much for taking time to be with us, because everything you're saying resonates with us and we really appreciate you. So thank you
It's
for joining us.
completely my pleasure. Thank you so much. It's lovely to have a conversation with people that are so like-minded, but doing it in a totally different way. So it's great.
Yeah,
Together we're better. I mean, that's one of our
Yep.
things, is that together we are better. And it's not about getting a bigger piece of the pie. It's about making the pie bigger.
I love it.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining us. Be sure to check the description if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're watching this somewhere else, make sure you make your way over to YouTube, like this video, and subscribe to our channel. And we'll have Josselyne's contact information there as well. So thank you so much, Josselyne. I think, like I said, we are definitely speaking the same language. And so we will definitely
continue the conversation.
Continue the conversation. I love it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream, and we'll see you guys on the next one.